Welcome to the Interprofessional Space podcast, where the spirit of inquiry meets healthcare collaboration. In our podcast, we discuss all things interprofessional education. According to the World Health Organization, interprofessional education, or IPE, is when students from at least two healthcare professions learn about, from, and with each other to improve health outcomes and enable effective collaboration. Introducing our guest, Mrs. Emma Pope, lecturer in radiotherapy and oncology at Cardiff University. Emma holds a Bachelor of Science in Radiography from the University of Wales College of Medicine and a Master of Science in Radiotherapy and Oncology from Sheffield Hallam University. Before her academic career, Emma worked as a treatment radiographer and in the Mould room at Velindre Hospital. This experience led her to Cardiff University, where she has been a permanent teaching staff member since 2006. She is currently a senior lecturer and the program lead for the Bachelor of Science, Radiotherapy and Oncology degree. She teaches a broad range of themes across the undergraduate curriculum. In recent years, Emma's research interests have focused on interprofessional education as part of her role as interprofessional education lead for the School of Healthcare Sciences at Cardiff University. She has a growing interest in interprofessional identity, and her work is reflected in her publications and presentations across these themes. Emma has been a board member of CAIPE, the Center for the Advancement of Interprofessional Education in the United Kingdom, since 2020, and co-leads the Translation of Evidence into Practice Priority Group. Please join Suzy and me in welcoming Mrs. Emma Pope. Hi, I'm Ann Curtis from Maine College of Health Professions.
And hi, I'm Suzy Plows.
And today we are thrilled to talk with Emma Pope. Welcome, Emma. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for inviting me, Ann and Suzy.
So let's start with the very first question. Tell us about your current role as a healthcare professional, please.
So I'm a qualified therapeutic radiographer. For anyone out there that is unfamiliar with therapeutic radiography, also called radiation therapists across different parts of the world. My main kind of professional role is with patients who are suffering from cancer, and my job is to deliver the high energy X-ray treatment that actually helps to eradicate the tumour cells. So I've been a qualified radiographer for more years than I care to remember. But currently my role is as programme lead at Cardiff University for the radiotherapy and oncology programme. So I have overall kind of scope in terms of the education for our students. We are a little bit unique in Cardiff University with our programme because it is the only radiotherapy and oncology programme in Wales where we're based. So we have the privilege of being able to send our students across the whole of Wales for their radiotherapy practice.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into IPE and what drew you to it?
I suppose I've really done or been involved in IPE since I started teaching way back in 2005. The School of Healthcare Studies, as it was then, was beginning to explore different elements. We've always done elements of shared learning, even as a student. We shared a lot of our kind of physics learning with the diagnostic radiographers. So even though we're both classed as radiographers, we are very different, at least here in the UK, where one group can't practice in the other's sphere, for example. So I've always had that kind of interest in what can we learn from others. And so when I started my teaching position, there was opportunity for us to start to develop kind of interprofessional modules and those sorts of things. And so I kind of started at that grassroots level because I think it's important we don't work on our own. We always work with others. And I was interested to be able to try and pull out where we might work in situations where it's not always obvious for our students to see where they work with others. So it was about being able to tease those areas out, really.
Exciting. So that was in 2005 your journey started. What are your roles in IPE today?
Well, I've kind of evolved a wee bit. So I've done module leading in interprofessional education. I'm currently the interprofessional lead for the School of Healthcare Sciences at Cardiff University. So that means that I look after all of the cohorts that we have here at Cardiff University within the school. So we have adult, child and mental health nursing. We have occupational therapists, physiotherapists, diagnostic radiographers, midwifery, and radiotherapy and oncology radiographers. So there's 8 kind of different professions, and I'm responsible for coordinating the IPE across the whole school. So we have several days in each of the cohorts where we have whole school IPE activities. So thinking outside the box a little bit in how we bring those together.
Just the logistics. So Maine College of Health Professions, we have 2 major programs, and the logistics of organizing that is daunting enough. I can't imagine 8. And then Suzy, your programs, you have, I can't even count. How many years?
Yeah,
you have a lot.
13, at this moment.
So you 2 are in a whole nother class. But a lot of great opportunities, it sounds like, because you can, even if you can't get all of them together, a few or even 2, right? A lot of unique opportunities.
What we try and do is we kind of run 2 arms here at Cardiff University. So we have in each of our year cohorts, so most of our undergraduate programs have a 3-year kind of program. So in each of the years, we run at least 3 days of whole school IPE activities. So they vary depending on year. And what we've tried to do is think about kind of how we can develop them. So we think about self in year 1. So what does it mean to be a professional in my kind of sphere? And then we get them, we start to get them to challenge that a little bit when we do our IPE. Then in year 2, we think about the team. So, okay, how do I now work with others? What does that look like? How can I build those skills? And then in year 3, we very much redirect again, and we think about collaboration. So we think about much more of them directing some of that learning within the sessions that we hold. And then we encourage our student or our individual programs to make those links and to have some IPE within the programs as well. It's probably a really good point here to highlight why this has come about and why we are maybe slightly a little bit different here in Wales. So here in Wales, our undergraduate healthcare programs are funded by an organisation called Health Education and Improvement Wales. And so they commission all of our programmes. And at the last tender point, HEIW, Health Education and Innovation Improvement Wales, wanted to make IPE more prominent within our programmes. And so now here in Wales, every higher education institution that runs a healthcare programme within the scope of HEIW has to provide 20% of the curriculum that is interprofessional education. And within that, there is a provision for 150 interprofessional collaborative practice hours as well. So that's in placement. So it's a big challenge really to try and map those.
Wow. And when was that again that they brought that in?
So our first cohort is just about coming to the end. So the program started really in 2019 and obviously in 2020. No, the program started in 2022. So in 2025, we'll have our first full cohort of graduates that have gone through the curricula in this way.
Now, was that a big change? Or I guess, do you feel like now that IPE is more prominent or given higher standing than it used to have? Or what do you think the impact of that has been?
It was quite a big change. It is still quite a big change, particularly the clinical elements. I have to admit, we do struggle to find those 150 hours or to make them meaningful and to make them authentic. And I know a lot is talked about interprofessional education opportunities being authentic. And I push the boat on that a little bit, particularly in our academic structure, because I think actually our workforce could be called to work together on any project that's out there. It's not just about who you're going to work with on a daily basis. So we we've structured our academic IPE in such a way that actually it doesn't matter what profession you're in, we can structure it so that, you know, actually you've been asked to do this, or you've been tasked with this group and you've now been asked to join this group, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of get people to think, oh, well, actually, I might work with a nurse or an oncologist that I've never worked with previously. But yes, 150 practice hours can be challenging. But we are making, you know, great strides. So I'm currently working on a project with some colleagues in practice and from another higher education institution here in Wales. And we're looking to see if we can develop a palliative care opportunity in practice, whereby we'd actually, the plan is to give the students 2 days in a palliative care unit, a day in a radiotherapy unit so that they get perspective, and then 2 days where they'll work on a case together. And then they'll present the case at the end of the week. So we're looking at how we can build, you know, more meaningful opportunities for our students around collaborative practice.
That sounds really interesting. I'm still one of my initial thoughts when you talked about the mandate for how many hours must be provided. One of my first thoughts was, how do you document all that? I'm thinking that must be, you know, are there requirements because it's funded externally? Are there requirements for that documentation? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm really curious about that.
So in terms of overall IPE, we write an annual report to the to HEIW, and they will then come back and go, well, you need a little bit more, you need a little bit less. And then all of our students document their clinical hours. The whole school uses an electronic portfolio system. And within that electronic portfolio system, it's been built in around IPE hours. So, you know, if a student goes to an MDT meeting or something similar as part of their practice, they can record that as interprofessional hours, and they have to do like a short reflective piece on there. And we all utilise the HEIW's reflective model or reflective questions so that everybody is having the same experience in terms of their collaborative IPE.
Sure, so there's consistency in terms of expectation and in terms of product. That makes a lot of sense. When you're facilitating an IPE session, it sounds like you have structure organizationally in terms of scaffolding the experiences over the course of someone's program. Do you use specific facilitation strategies or models that within one IPE session, so you have a go-to?
Probably not really. We recognize that just like all of our students are different, all of us as facilitators are different. So for each of our sessions, we have normally have a slide deck. So there's like some keynote slides that we deliver. And there's always kind of a facilitator guide that says, you know, do this for this long and this for this long, and this is where you can take a break. But I actually kind of say, just go with the flow. Go with what feels natural to you, because I think that's really important when you're facilitating. It's that, does it feel natural? If the conversation is flowing, there's no point moving them on at that point. You might as well stop and wait. So it is a skill. And I think the more you facilitate, the better at that kind of thing you get. But we also recognise that we need to be doing a little bit more in terms of maybe training our facilitators, giving them the support to be able to, because it's a little bit of a fallacy that anybody can facilitate. And it's even more of a fallacy when we think anybody can facilitate an IPE session, because it does require different skills. You have to put yourself in a different mindset. And I'm really interested at the moment around the concept of an interprofessional identity. So as healthcare practitioners, we all have our identity. So I will still say I'm a therapeutic radiographer, even though I've been in academia for about 20 years. I'm still first and foremost a therapeutic radiographer. Then I might be an academic, but actually I'm probably more of an IPE person now. And it's that ability to read your room and to be able to say, okay, so I've got midwifery, OT, and adult nursing in this room, and I don't really know a lot about them, but I can see where we can make some links. So by being able to off the hoof give examples of where they might be thinking about things in their profession, it kind of adds to that sense that actually you understand them and you're part of that particular group at that particular time. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job of developing within our facilitation staff. Not that they're not brilliant, because they are. Every single one of them is brilliant, but it's about how do we support them as well.
And I think it's a mindset, isn't it? A continuous improvement mindset. We can always do better. You know better, you do better. So I think that's a great point.
So I think we're going to do a little shift now to talk a little bit about what you do outside of Cardiff as well, but still integrated with your role. But you're on the board of CAIPE, and kind of full disclosure, so am I. So I know you quite well, so it's great to talk. But so if you can talk to us a little bit about CAIPE, why you wanted to join the board of CAIPE, what CAIPE means to you, and being a part of it.
So I suppose when I got the role of Interprofessional Education Lead back in 2019, I kind of felt a little bit like a pretender. I had that imposter syndrome very much, because even though I'd been involved in IPE, I still kind of felt that I didn't really have the knowledge or skills. I doubted my own abilities within the sphere. And at the time I think I got the role, actually it might have been 2020 I got the role. I was interviewed during lockdown, so you couldn't even go and build those kind of networks. And I was just looking for somewhere where I could get some advice and get some support. And that's where CAIPE come in, really. So it started off as just somewhere that I could go and talk to people. Got involved in a few projects at the time around some of the kind of the research that was going on, and the article writing and all of that sort of thing, which was brilliant. And then, slowly you started to build up that network. And CAIPE has been brilliant for developing that network of really close people I would call friends, who are always there and you can always reach out to. You might get a random WhatsApp message quite late at night and you think, that's really weird, but it's okay. Like, we've got any IPE literature on this, because I need to do a little bit of digging here. And undoubtedly somebody will always come back and say, oh, actually, I was reading this the other day and this is a really good article. So that's where I kind of started to look for CAIPE, or to look for support. And at the time they were looking for board members. I think I'd only been sort of involved with CAIPE for around 6 months, and they started looking for board members. And I can remember at the time having a conversation with the chair of CAIPE at that point in time. And I kind of said, well, I'm not really sure that I should be doing this. And, and he was really, really encouraging. He said, yeah, just have a go, see what you do, And I got the position, and at the time there was no other Welsh representation on CAIPE board. So I'm still currently the only Welsh kind of CAIPE member that sits on the board. And I think that brings a different perspective to the conversations that we have. So, when you think of the UK, we've got very separate countries. So we think about England, we think about Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And so it was lovely to be that representation and to actually fly the flag, and then to go out to them, when we started to get all of the tender information for HEIW that said this is what they're thinking of doing in Wales. There was always that place then that they went, wow, we need to have it's brilliant that you're here, because we need to have a seat at that table. So it's been really really helpful in those sorts of ways.
Absolutely. And we do a bit of work together, don't
we?
So we co-lead the translation of evidence into practice priority group. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what we've been doing? Share that?
Yes, so we've kind of had a bit of a whirlwind 18 months or so with the translating evidence into practice. I think when the new CAIPE board came in, there was a recognition that there's lots of policy documents out there, there's lots of guidance, but maybe what we're missing is how do we ensure that guidance is being implemented in practice. And so our role on the translating evidence into practice priority group is to kind of start the ball rolling, to do that questioning, to do the asking of our CAIPE partners, really. How are you using this information? What use is the guidance been to you? Or is there anything that we could do that would make, inputting IPE into your curricula a more smooth process? But also within our remit, Suzy and I have been working on developing a new award that will be hosted by CAIPE, and that is the WHO Barr Award. So we were very mindful as a board that we wanted to do something to recognise and also, I think, to honour. I think honour is probably the right word here, Suzy. To honour the work of Professor Hugh Barr, who has kind of been instrumental in how IPE has developed and progressed in the UK, and probably somewhat on the world stage as well. So we thought it was important that, as an institution, as an organisation, we had something that we could share that had Hugh's name attached to it. And so we are in the final stages of that development now, and hopefully we'll be able to launch that award shortly.
Because he came up with the definition of interprofessional education. So he created that initially many years ago, and then is now the current president of CAIPE.
I'd like to circle back to something you said earlier that may or may not feel comfortable talking about, but it really resonated with me, and I suspect it might for others as well. You talked about imposter syndrome, and I thought I've certainly grappled with that, and sometimes still do, frankly.
Yeah.
I thought your initial move to find others who were doing the work of IPE was a great first step. But I'm wondering if you have other things that you did that you would recommend to others when they encounter that, that sort of sense of what makes me think I can do this work. Do you have any other tips or strategies that you would? I'm putting you on the spot here, but
yeah, it's a difficult kind of thing, because even now there'll be particular things that I go in from an IPE perspective, and I've been instrumental in designing the activity, but I will still go in with somewhat of a oh, I'm an imposter in this field. So, for example, yesterday we were doing an interprofessional education with our first years around artificial intelligence in healthcare, and yeah, totally. I know where it's used in my sphere of healthcare. I can do a little bit about some of the other professions, but artificial intelligence generally, not my sphere of knowledge, really. And so, yeah, I still get that imposter syndrome even now, but I think it's part of actually seeking out those that can give you that kind of moral support. So here in Cardiff, we have, as well as our IPE facilitators, we have we call them IPE champions. So I have kind of a working group that work with me on our projects from each, and we have a representation from each of the professions. And when we were looking at developing an AI project, we actually reached out to colleagues in computer science. And so they've come and done a little bit for us, and we've tried to build some projects where we might be able to work with them on developing IPE, not IPE, but also artificial intelligence within healthcare, to make it kind of more real for our students. And so it is really, you will always find someone out there that you can have a chat to, or someone. So whether it's from within your own institution, I was quite lucky when I started out in that our deputy head of school very much came from an interprofessional education background. So she was always there, to reach out and go, I'm having a complete and utter nightmare. I don't know what I'm doing. Nothing is going right. I can't make these times or dates work. I just can't do this. And it's always having that person that actually sits down and says, it's okay, take a breath. You're doing a good job. And yeah, fighting that imposter syndrome. I think as healthcare practitioners particularly, we often sit with an imposter hat on in lots of different spheres. And there's a kind of philosophy in in radiotherapy particularly, in that we're a small profession and it's really difficult to get your voice heard. And I often think it's because we sit with our imposter hat on all the time. So when we get invited into things like multidisciplinary team meetings, or we're starting to branch out into advanced practice or consultancy within the sphere, we're always still sitting there with that imposter hat on. And it's a hard thing to break. But I would say, believe in yourself. Honestly, sometimes it's hard to hear the good things people are saying about you, but they're often true. And so believe in yourself, and that will help to break down those imposter barriers.
Thank you. I love that you talked about how alone you can feel in the IPE work. This is something Suzy has said multiple times, and it's always interesting to me to think about it, because IPE is such a collaborative effort, like the whole point of it, right? But while doing that work, we can often feel very siloed. So I love that. Believe in yourself and reach out.
It's one of those. Sorry, go on. Go on, Suzy.
I was just going to say it's an interesting point. So what I think is a lot of times what we do in IP, especially when you're leading it, is you're connecting people. So you're the connector. You're the one talking to everyone, bringing everyone together, joining up the different professions to do something, helping to make that happen. But it's not like you're kind of overseeing it, kind of managing it all, and and it is very isolating. Not that you're not connecting with everyone, but you're not as embedded, because you have to be out and running it all too, and really taking responsibility for that, taking ownership, and then there's So I think having that, maybe it's a level of responsibility. I keep trying to figure out why. I don't know. Someone brought up the other day, is it because those of us in IPE and really embedded it are so empathetic, and that perhaps that's also why we're kind of overly tuned in to different things, and then feel
It's interesting, isn't it? I think I have a slightly different not perspective, but my role is maybe slightly different to yours, Suzy, in that I facilitate the sessions as well, so I'm all in, and it's that lovely kind of thing, and that connection feels more real when you're facilitating for me. So when I'm in a classroom of students and I'm watching their faces, I can see them kind of starting to talk. That's where I kind of feel really connected. But you're surrounded by people and totally alone.
Absolutely. I think I feel that way with the students too when I facilitate. Absolutely. It is. I think I'm thinking more just with colleagues and thinking about that colleague thing. But the students, that's that's kind of why we do it, isn't it?
I think IPE is a very lonely train, and if you're on the train, you're on the train, but actually stopping at stations and picking people up, we maybe don't do that as often as we should. We don't stop at enough stations and let enough people on, and because for me, I think you have to be in that mindset. You have to be thinking about, well, actually, this is the direction that our health services are moving in, or our health services need to move in. But if you are coming from a background where you've always seen your profession as being isolated, or being not really talking to anybody else, or not interacting with anybody else, this is my job, nobody else can do it, then actually even putting your foot on that IPE train can be really daunting. Because you're suddenly taken along on a journey whereby, oh no, actually we can do this, and we can be anybody that we want to be, and we can create anything that we want to create. And I sometimes find a lot of resistance around that word of authenticity. So I find that professions can hide, and academics can hide behind this idea of, no, we don't want to be involved in that because it's not an authentic opportunity for our students. And actually, a lot of what I want to do is go, well, it doesn't matter what colour your scrubs are. Genuinely, we're all healthcare practitioners. So, we all need to think about professionalism. We all need to think about how the digital world is shaping and changing the way we practice. And so authenticity is what we make it. Authenticity doesn't necessarily mean the same old standards that we have seen in practice over many years or decades.
Love the train analogy. You're something you said earlier. What we're asking people to do is it's a paradigm shift. We're asking them to redefine themselves as as an interprofessional team member.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an expansion, and that can be really challenging.
Yeah, it's about creating that separate identity, yet another identity, yet another hat that you have to wear. And you're right, it's scary. It is scary. And when you're faced with somebody who is super enthusiastic and, driving it forward, and you're thinking, no, this is too much for me. And so, that resistance, I think, is always going to be there. And it's one of those huge questions around IPE, isn't it? Is where does the shift have to come from? Because I think in academia, we are very good at making that shift. We've started over a number of years, in some spheres it's been running for decades, of having an interprofessional theme or thread running through curricula. But our students come back from the clinical areas, and that's not necessarily what they're seeing in those clinical environments. So do we need to be shifting our clinical practitioners? Do we need to actually have them on the train? Should it be those guys that we're trying to get on the train? And that's what we're looking at here in Wales at the moment, is how do we help our clinical educators, our clinical practitioners, how do we help them suddenly need to facilitate in an interprofessional manner, in an interprofessional way? Because it can't just be about, turning up and shadowing somebody. That is a period of time. It's not necessarily a meaningful exploration of where those overlaps exist within the clinical environment. That isn't to say there are lots and lots of good examples of interprofessional collaboration within the clinical sphere, but I think they tend to be pockets, and they're the exception, not the norm. And it's about how do we shift it to the norm.
Suzy and I had a wonderful time chatting with Emma today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Don't forget to join us for part 2 of our interview with Emma, where we'll dive into the International Interprofessional Education event that the 3 of us co-hosted. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for tuning in to the iSpace podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us bring you more great content. Stay tuned for our next episode.